I began my distance running journey way back in 6th grade. I was just a scrawny little kid who knew nothing about distance running but got convinced to run an 800 and got hooked. Since then, I've learned a lot, continued to get better, became a state champion, went on to run in college, and became a conference champion. And despite some setbacks, I've continued to run to this day, alongside starting my coaching career 3 years ago. In this video, I'm going to share some of the most important lessons that I've learned and some things that I wish that I knew earlier in my running career. In summer of 2023, I had some pain in my lower leg that would not go away and kind of felt like a stress reaction. Instead of taking the time off that I need to, I attempted running a 100-mile week. And the final straw that broke the camel's back was a hard 16-mile long run. After that, I had to be completely off for 3 weeks and wasn't able to fully return to running for a few months. So if you ever feel something abnormal, it's better to deal with it when it's a small problem instead of ignoring it and letting it become a big problem. In summer of 2021, I was 1 week removed from being at a running camp with more motivation than I'd had in a long time. And I had a great first week of a new training plan under my belt. And then I sprained my ankle playing way too aggressive in just a for fun basketball game. And I couldn't run at all for 3 months. And it took another 6 months before I was able to get any sort of decent volume in. And even after that, it took about a year until there was no residual aches and pains and imbalances anymore. One silly little basketball game had derailed my running career by 2 years. You can have fun doing things outside of running, but you have to be smart with it and not put yourself in a position where you can get hurt and take yourself out of it for long periods of time if you're serious about running and you care about running. On 2 separate occasions, I've come from 5 days completely off and ended up running a PR. And it seems strange how that could happen, but it might have been a sign that I was overtraining a little bit. During the grind of a season when you're on all the time, you're hitting workouts and long runs and all this stuff, sometimes racing multiple times per week if you're a track athlete, and balancing that with school or work, it's a lot, and sometimes some days off can help you absorb all that training and actually adapt to what you've been doing. Those couple days can be enough time to really adapt and recover, but not long enough to actually hurt your fitness really at all. Now, it's not something to keep up. You need to be consistent in your training as much as you can be. But every so often, you might need to deload, and the results can sometimes be a nice surprise. There was one moment in a workout in college where I backed off a little bit, even though I knew I probably could have pushed a little bit harder. And I had really never done that before. I'd always been one to always be pushing. But after that first moment, I started to do it more and more. All it takes is one moment of you quitting on yourself, and that can snowball into becoming a terrible habit. You can work yourself out of it, but it can be difficult. So it's best to avoid getting into that situation in the first place if possible. Don't let quitting become a habit. I've lost races that I definitely should have won because I was too afraid to make a move early in the race. Everyone wants to kick at 400, but if you don't have an amazing kick, it can be an advantage to make your move from further out. Like instead of waiting till the final 400, go make your move at 800 or 1,000 to go in like a 3K or a 5K. And if you're trying to win a race, going early might scare people out of going with you. Or if they have a better kick than you, forcing them to go early might tire them out and take them out of the race. I've found myself several times early in a race further back than I'd like to be and unable to move forward. So even if you were to get out too fast, sometimes it can be easier to maintain your position than try to force your way through the pack. In most races, runners are going to finish within 10 places of where they start. But you just need to find that line between getting a good position and getting out like an idiot. Watch any high school race, you'll see a bunch of people get way out in front, way too fast, and then get their doors blown off them in the second half of the race. You have to run the first part of the race with your brain if you're going to be in contention later, but you also can't let yourself be so far out of it that nothing matters. My senior year of high school, I lost more races than I'd like to count on kick battles in the final 50 to 100 meters. So maybe it was a physical issue and my training needed some work to improve my kick, but I believe what was going on is in my mind, I saw myself as the person who got out kicked in the final 100. That's how I saw myself, and my self-perception created my reality. So in the state championship 3200, when it came down to a kick battle in the final 50 to 100, what happened? I was able to find a gear that I had not had all year and come back and win the race. And what I believe there is my self-perception, my belief in myself as a state champion was stronger than any image of myself that I had as someone who's not a good kicker. I had my eyes on a state title since 8th grade. That was what guided me, that was my North Star, that's what I always wanted and visualized myself achieving. So in that moment, when I've only got 50 meters left in my high school career, and my dreams of a state title are on the line, that visualization of myself as the state champion was more powerful than anything else. That's how I was able to find that extra gear, make that move, and win a race that I may not have been able to win if it was not the state championship. My mind won me that race. Running is a very easy sport for letting comparisons with others get into your head. Results are all over the internet. There's DieStat and Runner Space posts all the time. And people are posting their training to Strava, and people are posting videos and pictures of all their training on Instagram. There's a lot of stuff out there to compare yourself to, but you need to shut that out as best as you can and focus on what you need to do that's best for you. Everyone's on their own individual running journey. You need to focus on what you need to do to become better every day, not what some random guy on Instagram is doing. You need to be focused on that process, not comparing outcomes with other people. Don't be distracted trying to make yourself look better than others. Don't let anything distract you from your own progress at your own speed that you need to focus on. There was a period in my training where I was putting in lots of volume, like weeks on end of 90 plus miles per week. The problem was I wasn't doing any sort of strength or mobility work at all. Literally nothing, literally no other activity that would help me absorb and recover from this type of training that I was doing. And the result was a femoral stress reaction. And I was out of commission for many months. If you want to train hard, you have to put the work in outside of running that's gonna allow you to handle that running training. That includes stretching, mobility, strength, eating, sleeping. All that stuff needs to be taken care of. It's just as much of training as anything else. And sleep especially is a big one. Get enough quality sleep and your performance is generally gonna increase and your risk of injury will be lower. There's really nothing that's better at helping you absorb your training load than sleeping. But also on the flip side, nothing can derail your training worse than getting insufficient sleep. So make sure that's something you're prioritizing. It's going to be your greatest recovery tool. Another thing to focus on is hydration. I took for granted the importance of hydration until I finished a race crawling across the ground and ended up in the hospital with an IV. It's something simple that can really make or break your performances, especially in longer races, especially on hot days. And it's something that needs to be focused on not just the day of a race, but in the days leading up to it, really just all the time. And something maybe a little less talked about is your iron levels. It can be disheartening getting into a racing season after putting in some really good training, only to feel like your racing has gone nowhere and maybe your progress is stagnating at best, or at worst, even like decreasing. I went through this my sophomore year of high school, and it wasn't because I was messing up training or anything. I was healthy, I was doing everything right, but my iron levels were low, and that's what was causing this. So iron helps with the process of your blood being able to carry oxygen into your muscles, get it to where it needs to go. So if your iron is low, your oxygen carrying capacity is limited and your performance is going to suffer. So my sophomore year, after a week of taking liquid iron, which was like very high density and tasted horrible, I did notice like significant improvement even after just a week. And I haven't had any problems since. I've been regularly taking iron ever since that time period. In myself and other people as well that I've seen, like taking care of your iron can make such a difference. Like when things are good, you can be a completely different athlete than from when your iron levels are too low. And on the theme of blood oxygen carrying capacity, my high school coach told the story once of a former athlete whose performance just fell off a cliff, like seemingly instantaneously, and was wondering what was going on, asked them if they'd done anything, and they said they had donated blood recently. So when you donate blood, like the volume that is withdrawn is a fairly significant amount, and because blood is what's carrying the oxygen around your body, losing that much makes a big dent in your performance capability. Now, something like a little blood test, like a little vial, isn't going to do very much, but a donation will take quite a bit out. So if that's something you feel like you're called to do, if you're worried about your performance, like save that for after your big race, because if you don't, you might be in a world of hurt come race day. There was a point in high school where I kind of thought I knew everything. Like I thought I had everything all figured out. Everyone else is an idiot. Like everyone should just do what I'm doing. Like I knew everything about training and racing, and I thought I was the training and racing genius. That's kind of like the apex of a curve with the Dunning-Kruger effect. Like the more time I spent around, like the more I realized I really don't know all that much. Like there's a lot of things that I need to research and to figure out, need to better understand. If you're going to be a serious runner, you should always be striving to learn more and understand things as best as you can. Never stop learning. Never assume that you know it all. If you don't understand why you're doing something, the chance of you screwing something up is much higher. If the purpose of a workout is to train lactate threshold, going too fast and dipping into VO2 max territory does no good for you. If you're training speed and neuromuscular ability and you cut the rest down and you're too tired and you're not fresh, the workout isn't serving its purpose. It's my first track season in high school. We started off the year running a bunch of hills, and 14-year-old me didn't understand why we were running up all these hills if the racing that we're going to be doing was all just flat and even. What I didn't understand is the universal benefits that hill training can have, forcing you into better form, activating your muscles in a new way to get a different stimulus, and providing some speed and some strength work with less impact force than flat ground running has. All these benefits can make hill training a great option no matter what type of race that you're training for. I didn't understand exactly what threshold training was when I first got introduced to it. I just knew I was running 2 to 3 times 2 miles at a certain pace. And every day I was running those type of workouts, I would just stick to that pace range no matter what. I thought that was the important thing. But there was one day I was trying to stick to a pace and just felt absolutely awful. I was tired, it had been a long day, it was 100 degrees out, and holding this like pre-prescribed pace that I had in my head just was not going to happen. If you want an actual threshold stimulus and you don't have a blood lactate meter, you have to get an idea of what that pace is actually supposed to feel like, not just what the watch tells you it is. A target pace that you have is only an approximation, and in the wrong conditions can lead to overtraining. I've gotten to the end of the season before in track and cross country. Excited because the big meets are finally here and the training would get easier as we taper off and get ready for these big races. I expected to feel amazing and refreshed and recovered and ready to go. But when race day came, a lot of times I felt flat and didn't have that kind of pop in my step that I wanted. So I've done some aggressive tapers where we get down to running like 20 or 30 minutes per day tops leading up to these end of the year races. And the workouts were pretty light as well. And when you drop off that much from what you've been doing, it's almost kind of a shock to the system. Like you've been in this rhythm for so long, and then all of a sudden you drop the volume and the intensity way down, and your body is kind of like, whoa, what's going on? So I've seen and observed some like really good athletes and teams as they get into like peak racing season that really don't taper off all that much. They're still doing 10-mile runs and fairly normal workouts like leading up to like big championship races. I think I've heard of like BYU guys running 80 or 90-mile weeks like the week before the NCAA championships. And for those guys, that's just what it takes to keep the body in the same rhythm that it's been in for months. Not doing anything too different from what it's used to. Keeping everything firing normally and that muscle tension where it needs to be. Keeping that feeling of freshness and being ready to go. Many runners have seen benefits with training cycles that are about 6 months long. The original Lydiard system was 6-month cycles, and a lot of people have stuck to that and it seems to work well. I personally have tried stretching it out longer, like 10 months, but I found that the mental and physical fatigue of that just becomes draining. You feel like you're stuck in one type of training for too long, the race is too far away to really engage you. So that's why I personally like 6-month cycles. Everyone's going to have different preferences, but I think it's good to not stretch out a training cycle too long. So we have a lot of numbers in the running world today with apps like Strava and all these data from smartwatches. I think it's important to not get carried away with all these numbers, just trying to make our training metrics look good. Run the right paces for you. Take a day off to recover or cross train if you need to. I personally have gotten injured and then stayed injured for longer than I needed to just because I was trying to keep a running streak alive. Listen to your body, not your watch or your phone. You have to be mindful of the conditions that you're in when you're working out or running. Like if you try working out at altitude like you would at sea level, or if you try working out in the heat like you would on a nice cool day, like you might be in for some bad results. Altitude, temperature, being sick, anything like that, you have to take these factors in mind when making your training, and don't go overboard, don't overtrain yourself. Just keep in mind all those things. So I've made the mistake of trying to use workouts to kind of force myself into shape without the aerobic base that I needed. The result is disappointment when you're ripping all these good workouts, but the improvement in racing is not actually there. The aerobic base is the most important part of training. Without that, everything else is going to fall flat. You should aim for 2 to 3 months of base building in every cycle that you're doing if you want to be the best runner that you can. But during base training, you can't allow yourself to get greedy. When I first started running in high school, our coach was only having us do like longer and slower runs, but I wanted to run fast. Running fast feels like you're improving, and it felt like the easy running wasn't doing as much as I wanted to. And over the years, I learned why. I watched one of my teammates go very hard with workouts over the summer and be in amazing shape at the beginning of the cross-country season in August, but by the time the fall rolled around, it was actually time to race and go to state. He was kind of hanging on for dear life. So you need to trust the process and just get through that important but yes, kind of slow, boring phase of training early on in a cycle. But base training is more than just easy miles. For years after that, from high school, I believed that like easy mileage was the only thing that mattered, and that would take care of everything. And it takes care of a lot, but not everything. Because once workouts and races started, I was kind of struggling a little bit. But recently, I've made base training not just about building an aerobic base, but building a base for speed as well. Strides, short sprints, plyometrics, strength training, that's all base training as well. You still want to hit the volume that you're trying to hit, but ever since implementing that other stuff, my ability to run fast and my mechanics have been improving. And when workouts start later in the year, I feel so much better and more prepared for it when I'm doing that other speed-based stuff as well. In cross country, my sophomore year of high school, I had traded the number one spot on the team back and forth with one of my teammates all season long. Over the winter, going into track, he ran 80 plus miles a week, and I kind of just rode off the talent that I had, doing the bare minimum of what our coach was prescribing us to do, thinking that I'd be fine. Him and I were going to run the same times anyway, but that track season, he ended up running 9:10 and I ended up running 9:40 in the 3200. So my results weren't bad, but they were not the amazing results that he was having. Seeing him run that well was kind of the kick in the ass that I needed to realize that volume is important and I should try to get a lot of it. So from junior year onward, I kind of made that a focus. By senior year of high school, I'd gotten up to 80 plus mile weeks and ended up running basically 15 flat in cross country, 15:01. And I would not have gotten there without the training that I had put in after learning the importance of high volume, watching my teammate do great things. That realization, the importance of volume, I think is what helped me more than anything else in high school. That was a real turning point for me. So I had a great senior year in cross country and track. I won lots of races, but I also lost a bunch of races in kick battles. So I couldn't understand exactly why I was not a great kicker. I had great speed. I could run a 400 in 51, but I could not translate that into being able to shift gears late in a distance race. So, and it especially didn't make sense because my freshman and sophomore year of high school, I had an amazing kick in the end of races. But looking back, I think one thing that affected me was a lack of training muscle fiber activation. Every workout we did was at a steady pace, and we rarely touched speeds faster than 3200 pace. But to have a good kick, you need to be able to tap into as many muscle fibers as possible. And that can be done by doing workouts with alternating speeds. Something like 50 meters sprint, 50 meters float. Do that for a lap or two. Something like 300 on, walk 50 meters, sprint 200 meters. Not just steady aerobic reps 100% of the time. But those kinds of on and off workouts were a lot more common freshman and sophomore year of high school. So I had a different coach than my junior and senior year. And I was doing those on and off alternating workouts, tapping into different groups of muscle fibers. I had a much better kick than when I was just running steady workouts all the time. In elementary school, for the longest time, I just wanted to be a sprinter, and people were trying to convince me to run longer races like over and over again. And I eventually tried running the 800, and it went great. There is an appeal to shorter races. They're probably physically easier to run. They ask less of you. It's only a few seconds and not a few minutes. But the ceiling that you can reach with distance running is a lot higher. And I think there's a lot of people who are good at short races but could be great at longer races if they were just willing to make the move up. Don't be afraid of the longer stuff. Give them a try and just see how it goes. You might surprise yourself like I did. So my senior year cross-country season, great year. Things were moving along really nicely. And we were coming up on our biggest meet of the year, which was the Desert Twilight Invitational hosted by Nike. This meet had teams from all sorts of states coming in, and talking to my coach, I said I want to be the fastest runner from Arizona in the race. And my coach told me, if you're going to be the top finisher in the state, you might as well try and win the whole thing. Yeah, I took a second to think, and I realized he was right. I wondered, why was I limiting myself? So in that week leading up to it, I got comfortable with the idea of winning that race. And when the day came, as the race went on, I put myself in that position. I took the lead in the final mile, and it ended in heartbreak. I got outkicked the last 50 meters. It kind of sucked. But I don't believe that I would have been anywhere near that if I had just set my goal as being top Arizona finisher. I would have gotten into that position, and I would have gotten comfortable, and I just would have stayed there. I would have had my more limited mindset. I would have been perfectly happy finishing 5th or 6th or whatever. So open your mind to big ideas. Don't be afraid to be bold and get uncomfortable, and you might surprise yourself with what you're able to achieve. So with that, that'll wrap up the video. I hope you were able to get some good knowledge out of this and maybe have a realization that'll set your running career on a good trajectory.